Stop meddling, Mom. My daughter Sarah said it without even looking at me. Her hands were deep in the sink, sleeves rolled up, water running over a pile of dishes. The words dropped into the kitchen like a plate hitting the floor. I was standing at the counter, my hand still resting on Emma's lunchbox. I had just suggested, gently, that maybe Emma needed a more regular bedtime. She had been yawning at the table, rubbing her eyes, her little shoulders slumped. "Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice soft, "I'm just worried about her. She looks so tired lately." She turned off the water with a sharp twist. I said, "Stop meddling. This is our life. Emma is our child. You had your turn." Our eyes met for only a second. Hers were red-rimmed, not from crying, but from exhaustion. Mine felt suddenly too old for my own face. Mark sat at the table behind me, scrolling on his phone, pretending to be invisible. Emma hummed to herself on the floor, playing with a sticker book. No one spoke. I felt the heat rise from my chest to my cheeks. I was in my daughter's kitchen, in a house I had helped them move into. My casserole dish was cooling on the stove. My knitting bag was on the chair near the door. In one sentence, I had been turned into an intruder. "I didn't mean to," I started. Sarah sighed hard, like the whole world was resting on her shoulders. "I know you mean well, Mom. But everything is already stressful enough. Please. Don't tell me how to run my home." She picked up a plate and started washing again. The conversation, as far as she was concerned, was over. I looked at Emma. She glanced up at me, then quickly back down at her stickers, as if even at 5 years old she understood that today was a day to stay quiet. I set the lunchbox down. My fingers were shaking. On the fridge door, there was a drawing of a house with 3 stick figures standing out front. They were holding hands. Someone had drawn the sun very big, taking up the whole corner of the paper, as if to make sure there was enough light. But the room around me felt dim. "All right," I said. My voice came out smaller than I expected. I'll get out of your way." I took my casserole from the stove, even though no one had touched it yet, and fixed the lid. Mark finally looked up long enough to mumble, "Thanks for bringing that, Lydia," but his words floated somewhere above us, landing nowhere. I walked to the door and picked up my coat. My keys jingled louder than usual in my hand. No one followed me. No one said, "Wait, Mom, don't go like this." On the porch, the autumn air hit my face, cool and sharp. I stood there for a long moment, my casserole dish heavy on my arm, listening to the muffled clink of dishes from inside. It sounded like any ordinary evening in any ordinary house. But something had shifted. Back then, I thought the worst part of that night was the humiliation. I didn't know yet that Sarah's words would push me into the biggest decision I had made since my husband died. And I certainly didn't know they would uncover a secret my daughter had been hiding from me for months. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, stay with me, you need to hear what happened next. When I got home that night, I put the untouched casserole in my own fridge and sat down at the kitchen table. The house was quiet. The clock over the stove ticked too loudly. "Stop meddling." The phrase ran circles in my head like a stray dog that wouldn't leave the yard. For years, I had filled the spaces in my life by being useful to my children. I babysat. I cooked. I ironed little shirts and patched knees. When my husband died, I poured everything I had left into being helpful. Helpful felt safer than lonely. So when my own daughter told me I was meddling, it was like she had taken a knife and cut through the one role I thought I still knew how to play. I sat there, my hands wrapped around an empty mug, and made a decision. I would do exactly what she asked. I would stop meddling. The next morning, instead of calling Sarah to remind her about Emma's dentist appointment, I let the phone sit on the counter. I still remembered the time, of course. but my finger stayed in my lap. When I wanted to send a long text about a sale on kids' shoes, I deleted the whole message and put on my shoes instead. I went for a walk around the block, letting the cold air nip at my nose while the leaves crunched under my feet. At first, it felt like punishment. I wasn't sure who I was punishing, my daughter, or myself. Days turned into weeks. I stopped dropping by unannounced. I stopped asking if I could help with anything. When Sarah called, I answered, but I let her be the one to choose what to share. I asked how she was doing, then forced myself to wait through the silences instead of jumping in with advice. Without my constant orbit around her life, I realized just how quiet my own house had become. So I started filling it differently. I went back to the little church group I had stopped attending after my husband's funeral. I signed up for a senior exercise class at the community center 3 mornings a week. I replanted the herbs on my windowsill, pressing the damp soil around tiny green shoots, whispering to them like they were old friends. I thought that maybe, if I built myself a life that wasn't wrapped so tightly around my children, the ache would loosen. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. One Friday afternoon, Sarah dropped Emma off for a quick visit while she ran some errands. That was what she said, but she didn't step fully inside the doorway. She hovered, coat still on, eyes scanning the hallway like she was late for a train. "Do you want to come in for tea?" I asked. "Can't, Mom. I'll pick her up in 2 hours, okay?" She kissed Emma's hair and rushed back down the steps. Emma watched her go, her small hand gripping her backpack strap. "Are you all right, sweetheart?" I asked. She nodded, but her mouth twisted. "Mommy always has to run," she said. We spent the next 2 hours coloring at the table. Emma drew another house, but this time there were 2 of them, side by side. In one, she put herself and Sarah. In the other, just her father. I watched her little hand move the crayon slowly along the page. "Why is Daddy in a different house?" I asked, as gently as I could. She didn't look up. "That's his new place," she said. "He doesn't sleep at home now. Mommy says it's just for a little while." My heart dropped into my stomach. Looking back, the signs were everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. I remembered the nights Sarah had canceled our dinner plans at the last minute. The way she looked thinner each time I saw her, like someone who was constantly holding her breath. The tight tone in her voice whenever Mark's name came up. I had noticed that his truck wasn't in their driveway as often, but I had written it off as work. "Mommies and daddies fight sometimes," I said carefully. "But you know they both love you very much, right?" She shrugged. "They yell a lot when I go to bed," she said. "Mommy cries in the bathroom. I can hear her." I wanted to pick up the phone right then and demand answers. I wanted to ask Sarah why she hadn't told me. Why she had let her little girl carry these things alone. But her words echoed in my memory like a warning, "Stop meddling." That night, after Emma went home, I sat on the couch with my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles hurt. I tried to decide which hurt more, the possibility that my daughter's marriage was falling apart, or the fact that she had chosen to keep it a secret from me. At church on Sunday, my friend Margaret leaned over after the service. "I think I saw your son-in-law at the grocery store last week," she whispered. "Alone. Buying frozen dinners. He looked tired." I smiled politely, the way people do when they don't want to open the door to a conversation. "Everyone's tired these days," I said. Inside, my mind was racing. Over the next few weeks, I saw Sarah less, but I saw more of what the situation was doing to her. When she did come by, there were faint shadows under her eyes. She wore the same cardigan several times in a row. Her laugh, once bright and quick, seemed slower to arrive, like it had to climb a long staircase to reach her mouth. "Work is just crazy," she told me one evening, waving off my concern. "You know how it is. I used to respond with suggestions, meal plans, scheduling tricks, books to read, counselors to call. This time, I took a breath and swallowed them all. "I'm here if you need anything," I said instead. "Anything at all?" She nodded, but her gaze slid away. One rainy afternoon, I pulled a cardboard box down from the top shelf of my closet. Inside were decades of papers, mortgage documents, insurance policies, old letters from my husband tied with a blue ribbon. I started sorting through them, making neat piles on the living room rug. Part of me was finally doing the grown-up thing I had postponed for years, putting my affairs in order, in case something happened. Another part of me was searching for something I couldn't quite name. I found a copy of the loan we had co-signed with Sarah and Mark when they bought their house. My finger traced their signatures, young and hopeful, on the page. I remembered the day we sat at the bank, how I had told them, "This is a big step, but I believe you can handle it." I realized, with a jolt, how little I knew about what was happening in that house now. I put the paper back in the folder and closed it, my hand resting on the cover. She's not a child anymore, I told myself. She has a right to her privacy. But privacy and isolation can look awfully similar from the outside. The call that finally revealed the secret came on a Thursday morning. The sky was the color of dishwater, and the kettle had just started to whistle. "Mom?" Sarah's voice on the phone was thin. "Are you home?" "Of course," I said. "Is everything all right?" There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, slow and shaky. "Can I come over?" "Just me. I need to talk to you." When I opened the door, she looked smaller somehow, as if someone had let the air out of her. She clutched a tissue in one hand and a folded envelope in the other. I led her to the kitchen table, the same table where countless birthday cakes had been cut, school forms signed, and Christmas cards addressed. Today, it felt like a confession booth. She sat down, staring at her hands. "Before you start," I said, gently, "I want you to know something. I have been trying very hard not to pry. Not to tell you what to do. But I am still your mother, and I love you. Whatever it is, I'm here to listen. Not to judge. All right?" Her chin trembled. A single tear landed on the back of her hand. "Do you remember that night?" she asked. "When you were at our house, and I told you to stop meddling?" "I remember," I said quietly. "I've thought about it 1,000 times since then." Her voice cracked. "I was awful to you." "You were overwhelmed," I replied. "And I was, in your kitchen, rearranging your life." "I understand." She shook her head. "No. You don't know the whole truth." She unfolded the envelope and slid a stack of papers across the table. At the top was a letterhead from a law office. I read the first line and felt my breath catch. They weren't just arguing. They weren't just taking space. They were in the middle of a separation. Tears blurred the words on the page. Terms like joint custody and property division swam in front of me. "How long have you been going through this?" I whispered. "Since last spring," she said. "Before Emma's kindergarten graduation. Before Thanksgiving. Before that night you brought the casserole." I stared at her. "All that time, and you didn't say a word." She gave a bitter, humorless laugh. "What was I supposed to say, Mom? Remember when you warned me that Mark works too much and doesn't talk about his feelings? You were right, and now my marriage is falling apart." She sank her face into her hands. "I couldn't bear to hear, 'I told you so.'" Her voice came out muffled. "I couldn't bear to be your project. So when you started talking about Emma's bedtime and Mark's schedule, it felt like I was being graded on failing homework." And I snapped. "I'm so sorry." I watched my daughter, this woman who had once been small enough to fit in the curve of my arm, now crumpled in front of me like a child again. All the words I had rehearsed over the past months, lectures about communication, advice about counseling, practical suggestions, fell away like dead leaves. In that moment, I saw the secret that had been hiding underneath her anger. She wasn't pushing me away because she didn't love me. She was pushing me away because she didn't know how to let me love her without feeling exposed. I reached across the table and took her hands in mine. "Sarah," I said softly, "I'm so sorry you've been carrying this alone." She lifted her head. Her mascara had smudged into small gray shadows under her eyes. "I should have told you," she said. I was ashamed. I felt like I had failed at everything, my marriage, my job, being a mom. I didn't want to see that disappointment in your face. I shook my head slowly. "If you had told me sooner, I probably would have done what I always do," I admitted. I would have started making lists. Calling people. Trying to fix it. Maybe I would have made it worse. We sat in silence for a moment, letting that truth settle between us. "But these last few months," I went on, "I've been learning that I can't fix everything. Not your marriage. Not your choices. Not the past. All I can do is be beside you, not in front of you, telling you where to go." Her fingers tightened around mine. "So," I said, "let's start there. No meddling. Just standing with you. If you want that." Tears spilled over onto her cheeks. "I want that," she whispered. "More than anything." We moved to the living room, and she told me the rest. How she and Mark had been drifting apart for years, passing each other like coworkers on different shifts. How counseling had helped a little, then not at all. How he had moved into a small apartment across town for a while, and how a while had turned into signing papers neither of them ever imagined. She told me about Emma's questions at bedtime, the way their daughter lined her stuffed animals in 2 rows, Mommy's house and Daddy's house. She told me about the nights she sat on the kitchen floor, back against the cabinet, trying to breathe through panic attacks she never let anyone see. I kept thinking, if I just work harder, if I just do more, if I just get organized, I can hold this family together, she said. And every time you made a suggestion, it felt like one more thing I was failing at. I listened. I didn't interrupt, even when my chest tightened with the urge to offer solutions. I let her words fill the room like water pouring into an empty glass. When she finally fell quiet, I spoke. "Do you remember when you were little?" I said, "and you came home from school with that science project that fell apart in the car? You sat on the driveway and cried because all your hard work had just become a box of broken pieces." She gave a wet little laugh. "The solar system made of styrofoam balls?" "Yes," I smiled. "You wanted me to fix it, but not by doing it for you. You just needed someone to sit beside you while you figured out what to glue back together, and what to let go of." I squeezed her hand. "This is like that," I said. "Except the stakes are bigger, and the pieces are heavier. I can't rebuild your marriage. But I can sit in the driveway with you while you decide what your life will look like now." Her shoulders relaxed a fraction. "What if I make the wrong choices?" she asked. "You will make some wrong ones," I said gently. "We all do. But you won't be making them alone anymore." She took a deep breath, the first full one I'd seen her take in months. "Could you," she hesitated, "could you pick Emma up from school twice a week? Just until things settle a bit? I don't want her to feel like everything is falling apart at once." My heart swelled. Not because she needed me to jump back into the center of her life, but because she was inviting me in with open eyes, not out of panic. "I would be honored," I said. "We'll make those afternoons special. Not to pretend nothing is happening, but to remind her that some things are steady." "And Mom," she added quietly, "if I start to shut you out again, could you remind me of this conversation? Gently?" "I will," I promised. "But I'll knock on the door, not break it down." She smiled through her tears. Deal. Later that week, Emma and I sat at the same kitchen table with our crayons spread between us. This time, she drew just one house. Inside it, there were still 3 stick figures, but she drew them standing in different rooms. "Is this Mommy's house?" I asked. She nodded. "Daddy's still at his place," she said. "But Mommy says Grandma's going to help us. She said we're a team." She picked a yellow crayon and drew the sun again, big and bright, but this time she added a soft line of light coming in through a window. "You know what I like about your pictures?" I asked. "What?" she said. "You always remember to draw the light." She considered that for a moment, then shrugged. "It's easier to see people that way," she said simply. When she went to the living room to watch her cartoon, I stood alone at the sink, rinsing our cups. The evening light poured through my own window, turning the water in the basin to silver. Months earlier, my daughter had told me to stop meddling, and I had heard it as rejection. Now I understood it was a clumsy, desperate attempt to protect herself from more pain. Stepping back hadn't meant stepping away. It had meant making space for her truth, her choices, her secret she'd been too afraid to say out loud. And in that space, something unexpected had grown, a different kind of closeness, rooted not in control, but in respect. These days, I still cook for them sometimes. I still pick Emma up from school, her backpack bouncing as she runs into my arms. I still sit at that familiar kitchen table. But I don't rearrange their cabinets or give unsolicited advice about bedtimes. Instead, I ask, "How can I support you today?" And then I listen to the answer. If you've ever been told you were meddling when all you wanted was to help, I hope you remember this. Sometimes the most loving thing we can do is step back just enough for the people we love to choose us, not just tolerate us. It's never too late to learn the difference between controlling a life and standing beside it. And it's never too late, no matter how old you are, to claim your own dignity in the middle of a broken story. If this story touched your heart, you can like this video, leave a comment, or share it with someone who might need to hear it. If you've ever felt treated like a burden or pushed aside as meddling, my next story may speak to you even more. And if you'd like more stories like this, you're always welcome to subscribe to this channel, Lydia's True Stories.